Moses, the man who walked with God. The cry of Israel rose from Egypt like smoke from a furnace. For 400 years, the descendants of Abraham lived as slaves. Backs bent, hands blistered, spirits crushed beneath Pharaoh's whip. Their children were born into chains, their dreams buried under bricks. Yet heaven heard them, and God moved. When Pharaoh ordered that every Hebrew baby boy be killed, fear filled the land. But one mother refused to surrender her son to death. She hid him for 3 months, then placed him in a small basket and released him onto the Nile, into the hands of destiny. That child was Moses. The river carried him to Pharaoh's own palace. He was drawn from the water by the princes of Egypt and raised as royalty, educated in power, strength, and wisdom. Yet his blood remembered the cry of slaves. Though dressed like a prince, Moses carried the heart of a Hebrew. One day Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Rage rose in him like fire. He struck the Egyptian down, and in that moment, the palace doors closed forever. Moses fled. He became a shepherd in Midian, trading silk robes for dusty paths, royal halls for silent deserts. 40 years passed. The fire in him faded, or so it seemed. Then one day on Mount Horeb, the ordinary became holy. A bush burned, but was not consumed. From the fire, God spoke. Moses, the shepherd, trembled. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had called him by name. God revealed his plan. Moses would return to Egypt, not as a prince, not as a fugitive, but as a deliverer. Moses doubted. He stammered. He feared. But God declared, "I am with you." And that was enough. Moses stood before Pharaoh, the same house that raised him, and spoke words that shook empires. "Let my people go." Pharaoh laughed. So God answered with power. The Nile turned to blood. Darkness swallowed the land. Storms fell. Egypt trembled beneath the hand of the Almighty. Still, Pharaoh's heart remained hard, until the final night. Death passed through Egypt, but the homes marked with lamb's blood were spared. Broken at last, Pharaoh released Israel. But freedom would not come without a final test. As the Israelites fled, Pharaoh chased them with chariots of war. Ahead was the Red Sea. Behind was certain death. The people cried out in fear. Moses lifted his staff. The wind of God roared through the night. The sea split open, walls of water standing like towers on either side. Israel walked through on dry ground. When Pharaoh followed, the waters returned. Chains sank, slavery drowned. Israel was free. Moses led millions through the desert, where God fed them with manna from heaven and water from rock. On Mount Sinai, Moses met God face to face. Fire covered the mountain. Thunder shook the earth. There, God gave the law, guiding a former slave nation into a holy people. Yet leadership was heavy. The people complained. They doubted. They rebelled. Still, Moses stood between God and Israel, praying, interceding, loving a stubborn people with relentless faith. After 40 years in the wilderness, Israel stood at the edge of the Promised Land. Moses climbed Mount Nebo and looked upon Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. He would not enter, but he smiled, because Moses' mission was never about himself. It was about obedience, about faith, about walking with God even when the road was hard. God buried Moses himself, and heaven honored a man who chose God's call over comfort, faith over fear, obedience over power. Moses did not just part a sea. He showed that God still delivers, that no chain is too strong, no Pharaoh too powerful, and no desert too long for the hand of the Almighty. And his story still whispers today. When God calls you, even the sea must move.